Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Angela Thelen-Baker, and I'm the Communications Officer with the American Library Association's Public Programs Office. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's online learning session, Author, How to Find One, Host One, and Make Your Library the go-to place for author events. This session is presented by ProgrammingLibrarian.org, a resource website of the ALA Public Programs Office, and is presented with support from the ALA Cultural Communities Fund. Before we get started, I'd like to set out some basic information about communication in our online classroom, and then we will move along into our main presentation. If you experience any technical difficulties during today's session, please send a private message to our technical support, Angela Hanshaw. You'll see her name listed in the top left-hand corner of the screen there. If you send a private message to her describing your problem, she should be able to help you troubleshoot it. To send a private message, click on the name Angela Hanshaw right there at the top of the list and select Start Chat With to send a private message. We will have a question and answer period after the main presentation, so we will welcome you to ask your questions at that point. Handouts for this webinar are available for download at the lower left-hand side of your screen. To download those documents, select the name of the document you want to download, and then click on Save to My Computer. And finally, if you experience technical difficulties during the session and you get kicked out for some reason, don't panic. The whole presentation is being recorded and will be available for you to view it at any time after the program's conclusion at ProgrammingLibrarian.org. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Andrea Lapsley, who has worked so hard to put this session together. Andrea is the Director of Development for University Libraries at Colorado State University and also a member of the ALA Public and Cultural Programs Advisory Committee. She will tell you a little more about what to expect from this session and introduce the rest of our fantastic speakers.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome everybody. As you've heard, I'm Andrea Lapsley, and I'm pleased to serve as your moderator today. One of my most pleasant duties at this library is to organize and implement author programs in conjunction with our public library. And before that, I spent 20 years at a public library managing programming activities. So adult author programs are near and dear to my heart. And I know they are near and dear to your heart because we have such a large audience today. I know this topic's important to you and how popular these programs are with your patrons. So no matter if you're a veteran of putting on author programs or just starting out, there really is something for everyone in this webinar. There's many steps to ensure a successful author program that you'll hear about, including being a matchmaker. The information presented today is for libraries of all sizes, all types, and all budgets. You're going to hear from three extremely talented professionals who are some of the best in the industry. Two are from major publishing houses, and one is a highly successful programming librarian. As you heard, the slides and the handouts will be available on the Programming Librarian website, so no need to copy everything down where they're talking. Each of the presenters are going to talk about 15 minutes, and then after the presentation we will have time for question and answers. So let's begin. I'm going to introduce all three of the speakers at this point so I don't have to interrupt the flow of the presentation, and this will be the speaking order. Our first speaker is Virginia Stanley. She's the Director of Library Marketing at HarperCollins Publishers. She's been with the company since 1988, working with editorial, marketing, and publicity directors to put books and authors into libraries. She attends national and regional library conferences, talking about undiscovered must-read books and offering advice on how to host successful author programs. She was featured in the inaugural edition of Library Journal's Movers and Shakers in 2002 and has been moving and shaking ever since. Virginia will be followed by Elizabeth Fabian, and she is thrilled to have recently rejoined Random House Library Marketing Department as Associate Director. Prior to this new role, Elizabeth was Associate Director for Advertising for the Random House Publishing Group, executing campaigns for best-selling authors such as Lee Childs, Sophie Kinsella, and Jonathan Kellerman. Previously, she has worked with the marketing departments at Harcourt Trade Publishers and Hachette Book Group. In 2006, Elizabeth received her MA in Literature from the University of Virginia. And our final speaker will be Lisa Casper, Program Liaison, Highlands Ranch Library, Douglas County Libraries, Colorado. Lisa graduated with her MBA and MA from the University of Denver in the field of mass communications. She's worked as a hospital community relations manager, journalist, oral historian, and museum director. When she returned to Colorado, she worked full-time at the Tattered Cover Bookstore, doing author events and book club outreach. Currently, she works full-time at the Highlands Ranch Library, bringing in and running author programs, author events, and doing book talks. And she still works with the event staff at the Tattered Cover Bookstore, hosting events. So, Virginia, let's begin with you. What are some of the first steps, and how do our
Okay, hi. I hope you can hear me. Booking an author for a library event can be easy and pain-free. Advanced planning and flexibility are the keys to success. Okay, first slide. There I am. And I am thrilled to be here. I want to thank everybody for joining today's webinar. We're always looking to grow our database of libraries that can host successful author events. So I'm really excited that so many of you are attending this webinar to find out more about the process. So on this first slide, please take note of two separate sites that should be helpful to you when selecting authors for your library events. Most publishers have made their catalogs available online now. So Harper's is available right there at HarperCollinsCatalogs.com. Here you can find out about current and forthcoming books as well as authors on our list. The second site listed on the slide is a current listing of all of Harper's downloadable e-galleys on Edelweiss. So if you're interested in being added to our VIP list after you've registered, please send an email to librarylovefest@harpercollins.com. Now I just want to make sure that you all can hear me, because I don't want to keep talking if I don't see that you can hear me. You can. Okay. All right. So next slide is our blog. Every Harper Library maintains a blog as well as a quarterly newsletter that you may also find informative when considering authors to bring to your library. So please check those out and sign up. And if you find that it's clogging up your inbox, which I doubt it will be because we only send it out quarterly, you can always unsubscribe. Okay. First steps: deciding on a specific author or book. Know your community. Which authors and or topics interest your patrons? Big name authors are accustomed to speaking to several hundred people at a time, so please set realistic goals. It's a really good idea to provide us with a list of authors. Oftentimes your first choice may not be available, so please give us a wish list. Give us several names. But something I think that it's really important is what is unique to your community. If you have your heart set on a particular author, check first to see how he or she circulates in your library. If you have a strong ethnic population, let us know about that. HarperCollins has a first novel coming out that takes place in 18th century Stockholm. It's hard to find an audience for first novelists. Attendance is usually sparse. However, this author recently spoke about her book, The Stockholm Octavo, at Library Journal's Day of Dialogue, which is the day before BEA kicks off. Several librarians approached us about having that author speak at their library. So telling us they have a large Swedish population who would definitely come out to hear this author was music to our ears. So it's crucial for you to keep in mind that you are helping us as much as we are helping you. I would just like to let you know that in my notes that I'm reading from, I put that in boldface because I really mean it. This is a matchmaking service, and we're hoping for a love connection between our authors and the patrons at your library. Think outside the box. Create programs that involve your patrons. Programs that feature creative writing, short story writing, first-time novelists, and or local authors are often well attended by patrons who are aspiring writers. Partner with a local school, a community college, or writing classes. You've got a built-in audience. Don't just have a run-of-the-mill reading and signing, though they're great, don't get me wrong, but a fundraiser is great, or an afternoon tea where you can build the price of the book into the ticket. Other suggestions for great author events: books on self-help, do-it-yourself books, financial planning also make for great events at libraries. It doesn't always have to be about the big sexy author. It can be these, just real bare bones, nuts and bolts sorts of things that people need information on. So think about hosting events and partnering with local businesses. We've got a book coming out on wine, and we already have the author booked at a library that's bringing in local wines and having a wine tasting. So the possibilities are endless. Sound is okay? Okay. I'm just checking the chat box. Next up. So, who publishes which authors? Once you've put together your wish list of authors you'd like to pursue for your event, you need to determine which house publishes which authors. Most authors have their own website, so a quick search online should provide that information. However, you can also get that information from any bookseller website just by typing in the author's name. Click on the latest book that he or she has written, scroll down, and you'll see the publisher. You can also visit a wonderful site for librarians called earlyword.com. I'm sure many of you know about this site already, which is run by Nora Rawlinson. It's a great site. She updates it several times a day. She features everything from publishers' catalogs to sneak peeks at forthcoming books, to books being made into films. She also has hold alerts on titles that are building long wait lists in libraries. It's a terrific, terrific site. So there too you can find out who's publishing what. Also, this is sort of cool. If you want to determine where an author lives, a good trick is to visit the following website, edelweiss.abovthetreeline.com. Once you're there, if you click on the gray shaded box named GeoSearch, type in any city, and you will get a listing of every author in their current system that has that author's city of residence. If it's listed in the author's bio, it's going to pull up. So if you type in Seattle, you'll see every place where the author is going to, every author that lives in Seattle. I think it's a really cool tool. So these are just some good cross-referencing sites to determine not only who publishes a particular author, but also where the author resides and which books are being buzzed about. Okay. Erin Shea just wrote in from yes, Erin Shea, that is the wine tasting event that you are doing with Eric Asimov. Okay. The next slide, who to contact. Now that you've got your list of authors, who do you call? There is nothing more frustrating than making a cold call and being placed on hold, transferred a million times, or worse yet, being disconnected. We've all been there. Publishing houses have publicity departments, speakers bureaus, and in many cases, library marketing departments. The Association of American Publishers, the AAP, has a trade library committee that's made up of library marketers from most of the major publishing houses. There's an updated list of committee members located under the chat box right here on this webinar. It's on the left side. You can get it later. You can download it. It's up to the minute. It's just newly refreshed. It's got names, telephone numbers, email addresses. Everything is on this document. Please reach out to these folks. You know many of them, and they are eager to hear from you, just as I am. Plan as far advanced as possible. Timing is everything. That applies to most situations in life, including booking authors for events. You need to reach out to publishers at least 3 months in advance of your event. Everything takes time, so you need a lot of it. Sometimes a publisher can't get back to you right away with an answer about an author's availability. You may wait quite a while until you get a confirmation. But what if you finally hear back and the answer is unfortunately no? Then you've got to start all over again with more author requests, more calls to publishers, etc. And the clock is ticking if you're locked into a certain date. You'll also want to make sure that once you do have your author confirmed, you have enough time to spread the word to your community. So start early. I cannot stress this enough. The more time you have to promote your event, the more successful it will likely be. Lastly, Have your ducks in a row. You need to have as much information as possible about your event before you contact a publisher. Having your ducks in a row from the get-go instills confidence in the publisher that you've thought everything through and that the author is in good hands. Your best bet is to put everything in writing to the publisher versus calling. This leaves no room for crossed signals or misunderstandings. Tell us as much as you possibly can. The name of the sponsoring organization, the location of the event, the date, the time, the anticipated audience size. I know it's difficult to predict audience size, but it's necessary to have a general idea of how many people you expect at your event. State the exact nature of the event and what is expected of the author. Is this a book and author lunch, a breakfast, a dinner? Is the author going to give a straight lecture, or are they going to be on a panel with other authors? How long do you want the author to speak for? Will there be Q&A? Does the event have an overall theme, and do you want the author to tailor his or her talk to that theme? Where will the event be held? How big is your meeting room? A large venue offers the opportunity to host a big name author, while smaller rooms are good for debut novelists and mid-list authors. The more information you can provide up front is better. As far as expenses are concerned, sending authors to events can be costly. You've got transportation, accommodation, other local expenses do add up. If you have the funds to cover these costs, you've got a greater chance of securing the author of your choice, especially if that author is not on tour. If you don't have the funds, you might want to consider inviting a local author or an author who will be touring. Try to take advantage of the publisher's tours, where at least some of these costs are covered. If the publisher can build this event into the author's tour, we need to know as early as possible, which goes back to my previous point about timing. So it all depends on how many cities that author is going to be touring to. But the sooner we hear from you, hopefully the faster that we can rectify it and maybe work it into the tour. And lastly, book sales. You must make arrangements for books to be sold. Many libraries arrange to have their friends group or a local bookstore sell the books at the event. Or you can get books from the publisher or your preferred wholesaler, but books should be on sale at the event and also well in advance of the event. And once the author has said yes, hopefully, confirm all arrangements and agreements with a follow-through letter. Put those details in writing and it eliminates later confusion. I can't stress that enough either. So I think that's pretty much what I've got to say here. I'll turn this over now to Elizabeth Fabian at Random House, and I thank you so much for your time, and I really do look forward to working with you all in the near future on author events. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Virginia. You gave us a lot to think about, and I want to stress, too, how important it is to really write everything down and send it on to these wonderful people in the marketing departments of these publishing houses to help you. Think of everything that's unique about your community or your library, or for me, in an academic university, what are some of the really strong curriculums or programs that you might have that they can try to come up with good authors to be a match for you. Now, Elizabeth, we've heard a lot from Virginia to get us thinking about things. What are some of the next steps? And Virginia touched on compensation. Do all authors require compensation? Not necessarily all libraries have large budgets for this.
Hi everyone, sorry for the technical difficulties. We are working to get those resolved quickly, and we should be back with more from Elizabeth in just a minute.
Hello everyone. Angie, can you hear me? I'm still having problems with the slides, so perhaps if you could help me out there, that would be great. Wonderful, thank you so much. Once I get the thumbs up from Angie, I will start speaking again, and apologies for all of this. Great, thank you everyone, and thank you Andrea. There's a lot for me to talk to you about today, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you about author events in libraries. I'm going to build on the things Virginia said and also answer Andrea's great question about funds for having authors in your library. I'll take a quick moment to point out a few great tools just before I begin speaking as you're looking for author ideas or planning your events. Like HarperCollins and many other publishers, we have great resources online. Angie, next slide, please. We have Edelweiss catalogs and e-galleys. We have blogs and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and YouTube pages. As Virginia said, these are great places to find information about what we anticipate will be the next big authors, excerpts of upcoming books, and often videos of authors speaking about their work. This can give you a feel for not only the book, but also for the author and his personality or speaking style. So now on to the planning. You've taken all of Virginia's advice and you've selected the author you want to invite. You found the right person at the publishing house to contact, and you've sent off your proposal with loads of detail about your upcoming event. So what's next? Typically, Virginia or I or our counterparts at other publishing houses take a look at the proposal to make sure no vital information is missing, and then we pass it on to the person handling the author's appearance. Most often that's the author's publicist. He or she knows the author's tour schedule, their speaking schedule, their interview schedule, and their writing schedule, and can work with you to see if the author is available for your event. In these cases, the authors typically don't charge a fee to speak, and if they do, it's a very nominal one. However, a few of our authors do have extensive lecture schedules. As you can imagine, some of our authors like Robert Caro or Jeff Shara or Charles Duhigg, who's the author of The Power of Habit, are invited to speak at dozens and dozens of bookstores and libraries each year, but they're also invited to speak at universities and nonprofits and large corporations. Cue next slide, please. And that's where our Speakers Bureau comes in. Many publishers now have in-house speakers bureaus that work with our editors and authors, and then with libraries, universities, corporations, etc., to secure speakers for larger events. For these events, the authors do require an honorarium, and often travel expenses need to be covered, but the agents at our speakers bureaus are very willing to work with you to try and find someone to fit both your event and your budget. And what's even better, they'll walk you through the process of planning, from the budget to the travel arrangements to coordinating book sales. So it's really a wonderful resource, not just for us, but for a lot of you as well. And if you're ever curious about which of our authors work with our Speakers Bureaus, you can find all of that information on our Speakers Bureau websites. Cue next slide, please. HarperCollinsSpeakersBureau.com and RandomHouseSpeakers.com are just two of the in-house agencies that work with our authors. You can find lots of great info here. Okay, so let's imagine that now you've worked with the publicist or speaker's agent and you have the author booked for your event, you've ironed out the details of their arrival, and probably the most important next step is to do everything possible to get people into the audience. Next slide, please. Promote, promote, promote. There are tons of traditional things that you can do to spread the word about your author events. Get the staff involved in talking. Place posters, flyers, and displays in your library, in your branches, in your local bookstores. Next slide, please. Here's a great display from the Carroll County Library for the dressmaker when they did an event for that earlier this year. Can you go back one slide to the right side, please? You could also have bookmarks and postcards and book lists at your checkout desk. Include event information on your website, in your events calendar, e-newsletters, do special email blasts to your patrons and book club members. But I would also say to promote, look into partnerships with your local bookstores or schools or universities in the area, or writing classes or book clubs. They're great ways to spread the word. And if it's a self-help book or a business book or a parenting book you're doing an event for, try to find organizations in the area who specialize in that field, invite their members, and promote through them as well. Also, don't forget to send press releases to arrange for author appearances possibly, or interviews with local newspapers or radio stations or even TV stations. Or what's even better is to invite the media to come and cover the event live. And finally, in our continually plugged-in world, reaching lots of people quickly is easier than ever, so take advantage of it. Use all that social media that you have, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and get the word out to get butts into the seats. A packed room will make you and the author and the publishers very, very happy. So what makes an author happier than a large audience, though? Spend a little time showing them some love. Next slide, please. Give them the star treatment when they arrive. Start out with simple logistical stuff. Make sure there's a parking space reserved if the author's driving. Have someone greet or escort the author to where they need to be. Introduce the author to your staff and give him or her a brief rundown of how the events of the day will progress. Have drinks and snacks available for the author before the event. And get creative. Next slide, please. For a recent event for the author of The Dressmaker, the library made a cake for her, complete with an image of the book. How fantastic. Another library hosted an event for a novel that centered around a young woman who selected flowers for her customers based on their Victorian meanings. And at this event, the library gave out to each audience member a flower with a tag revealing its Victorian meaning. Spending the extra time will not only make the author feel loved, but it will set you apart from the rest of the programming when the author reports back to their publicist about how much they enjoyed the event. So all of this is wonderful if the author has accepted your invitation to appear, but what if the author isn't local? Or what if your wish list author isn't on tour and can't make it to your library? Next slide, please. I encourage you to embrace technology and consider a virtual visit. We've been doing more and more with virtual events these days, and many of our authors are not only technologically savvy, but they're ready and willing to log on to speak to you and your patrons, your book groups, etc. Skype is a fantastic tool. It's the next best thing to being there, really. Plus, it's an extremely cost-effective way of getting an author who, say, lives in Juneau, Alaska, to appear at your library. Your crowd simply gathers in your library auditorium, all set with a projection screen. The author logs on to his or her computer, complete with webcam, and after a few quick steps, voila, the author is on the screen in front of your crowd, ready to talk and take questions. Next slide, please. Lots of authors, including Harper's Adriana Trigiani and Random House's Steve Berry, have participated in Skype events with libraries with great success. Next slide, please. Another great venue for virtual events, or virtual chats actually, is Facebook. Next slide, please. We did an event earlier this year with Susan Cain, the author of Quiet, on the Columbus Metropolitan Library's Facebook page. They promoted the event through their social media and had almost 60 people participate in the live online chat. What's even more incredible is that the next day, the holds for Quiet in this library spiked tremendously. They had 450 holds on 23 copies of the book, which is astounding. And in addition to Skype and Facebook, there are always authors who are willing to call in to chat on the phone with your book groups. So there really are a lot of options outside of the in-person author visit to connect your authors and your patrons. And before I turn this over to Lisa, I want to mention one last key component from the publisher's point of view. When you have this wonderful, successful author event, Skype event, or phone chat, when it's over, please do reach out to us and let us know how it went. Next slide, please. We want to hear all about it, from the number of people who attended, to how many books you sold, to what went wrong, and hopefully what went right. Send us everything, really. Videos, photos, testimonials, and we'd love if you posted those great photos and videos on your social media after the event too, with the author's permission, of course. All of the follow-up helps us and the publicists as we continue to build a relationship with you and hopefully send more authors to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Boy, you gave us a lot to think about, not only authors in person, but virtually. I would like to add one thing that's been successful for us here, too, in partnering with our bookstores, beyond just book sales, but our bookstore that we partner with has a monthly book club and a book discussion. And when we have an author coming in, our bookstore is very good about selecting that book to be their monthly book club discussion. So that just reinforces the author appearance for us. So Lisa, now we're going to change directions just a little bit. We've secured the perfect author for our library and our community. Talk to us a little bit from the library side. How do you go about ensuring that you have an audience, and what follow-up do you do with the publishers that Elizabeth has requested?
Okay, well, thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. I appreciate being on the panel today. Thank you, Andrea. And basically, I'm going to talk about what I do at the library, what we all do at the library. I have my email and phone number if anyone wants to contact me after. I'm happy to help anyone with questions. And I'm going to reiterate some of what Virginia and Elizabeth said in choosing an author who will fit. And I'll use Brad Thor as an example because he's coming to our library on Monday. We have a conservative community and they love military thrillers, and we know this from checkout stats of various authors, Vince Flynn, Brad Thor, and so forth. And we also have a lot of military bases, so I decided that this would be a great way to maybe have people who maybe don't always come to the library come. And so then we got online with Simon & Schuster and Atria Books, and lo and behold, Brad Thor was touring. So that really fit in with our budgetary needs and their needs. And because we always partner with a bookstore, Tattered Cover Bookstore, that also made the publisher happy. So again, you have to pick your goal for the event. We're going to have Mr. Thor here. He's going to talk about his newest book, which is out today, Blacklist. And then he's going to answer questions and do a book signing. But Mr. Thor has another side. He also is very supportive of military organizations like Wounded Warrior Project and all the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. And because Colorado's had a few situations come up recently, I had wanted to do a table of information from some military organization and kind of get them some donations. And then after talking to them, I had the idea, and unfortunately the fires took place, to also include the Red Cross. And because our library is participating in Fines for Fires, we're going to collect funds for the Red Cross at that. And because Project Sanctuary is another military organization that's local, decided they could participate in this event because they had people that would volunteer to come. They will have all their information at the event. So I kind of think of it as a multi-purpose community event of giving out information that might be needed for military families or helping people who have been the victims of fire. Okay, so let me go on here. We have district events, and again, working with the author's publisher, publicists, sometimes speakers bureaus, we try and bring the most events in one day for an author and for our public. Our district books Top Chefs every fall, and we had Rick Bayless a couple of years ago, and we put him he was very generous with his time, and he was able to do 3 things in one day, and they were sold out. A luncheon that was at a local restaurant featuring his recipes. Then he went right to a rec center and had a huge cooking demo and talk. And then he went right to a big event hall that we use. and talk to hundreds of people and then sign books in the lobby. Now, not every author is going to be willing to do that, and that is why you have to see what they are willing to do and work with the publisher on that, and make sure you're not overwhelming them, and you have to take good care of your authors. So then, after you've picked everything, such as Brad Thor, I have to work with my graphics marketing department to plan my event. Sometimes the marketing department is many people in a library, sometimes it's one person, sometimes in small libraries it could be you. So you just have to kind of gear it toward what you can do. We're very lucky, we have a great marketing department here, and here are a couple of examples of what we're doing. We've got Craig Johnson coming to one of our libraries next month, Brad Thor Monday, and then this fall Hugh Atchison, and that's my bad photo of an ad in Bookpage. Bookpage is probably used by most libraries, larger libraries, and that's a great ad space on the back, and so you should sort of think about things like that. And then we also go on Twitter and write press releases and e-blasts and newsletters. But the most important thing is to partner with a local bookstore or some kind of book sales. Like if you do have friends at the library and you can sell books. We don't have that option, so we partnered with the Tattered Cover, and they were really great about coming and selling books at our events. The thing about bookstores, and I can talk to you about that from my other hat by working at the Tattered Cover, is they appreciate, like all of us appreciate, having time. So if you can let them know you have an event coming up within a month, they can actually staff it and order books and have everything go really smoothly for you. And a lot of local bookstores will actually give you a percentage of the book sales. You have to ask them, but that is also kind of their gives back way, and it's a great way to have a win-win partnership. And I can't stress enough that, remember, authors and publishers really have a main goal of selling books, becoming parts of bestseller lists, reading lists, and libraries can be the perfect partner for that, because that's what we know best is books or ebooks. In the promotion, you need to incorporate all kinds of weird ways to do it. I have to be creative because I don't have a large budget to promote, so I enlist my frontline people, which is your library staff and volunteers. This time we got little ribbons underneath our name tags that say Brad Thor's coming, New York Times best-selling author, July 30th, and that engages people who are reading your name tag anyway, and they say, oh, tell me about that, and then you can talk to them. But if you don't educate your staff and your volunteers as to what's going on in your library, they can't promote it. So make sure you include them in everything and help them do their jobs and excel at everything in promoting your library and your events. And also building community partnerships. We had liquor at a couple of our events, and I just went to the local liquor store, and it's a small business, not a chain, and they have been so willing to help. They are like one of our best frontline promoters now. They're always willing to take bookmarks and talk it up and be at beck and call, and it's really a useful partnership. But anything like that, radio stations, all kinds of ways to promote. Okay, now the PR materials I've said, and you guys all know bookmarks and posters and everything, but what really works is creativity. And aside from all the social networking and e-blasts, it really sometimes helps to reach on a real human level. And two ways I did this for Brad Thor were talking to local clubs. We did a talk at Rotary, did some reviews on Goodreads and our Viewfind catalog, and I marched, that's me in the red shirt, I marched in the parade, our 4th of July parade, which probably had a couple thousand people, and carried his sign, and actually people were very excited and came up and got bookmarks, and I passed out bookmarks, and so on the registration I noticed several people had seen it that way. Patrons see it every which way, so you never know how you're going to reach someone. My branch manager loves doing mannequins, and for Nancy Pearl we did a mannequin of Nancy Pearl, and while you might find it funny or a little creepy, it actually worked. and she loved it, and most of our authors love it, as silly as it might look, but it does stop people in the lobby, and then they know if they walk past the signs and everything. So the other thing about e-marketing is before I started working here, they had not been emailing patrons who have the book on hold by the author. And so for our CJ Box event a couple years ago, I asked permission to email the couple hundred people that had his book on hold. And I was able to, and it really worked. So that's what we've been doing nonstop, and we're building databases by feedback. All our patron feedback, we ask if they would like to be opt-in to have their email address and not, spam them or anything, but tell them what's coming up, and a lot of them do. And so far, I think I built a database up to like 500, but then we were able to hire an e-marketing person who can email all of our thousands of library card holders. But it really does help. And then other promotion, like I said, tabletop displays, power wall displays. The other weird thing my branch manager and I did was we started a reading chain. We tried this with CJ Box, and we just did it with Brad Thor too. We got donated books, older books of theirs, and we put labels in them, went out in the community, handed them saying, read this, pass it along. Here's the information, please come. And that seemed to really be a hit. The other thing is stuffing bookmarks everywhere. I go through the holds and I stuff them in like reads. That sometimes draws. I hand them out to people who are looking in the various areas, or maybe they have a thriller in their hand, and I say, oh, I have to tell you about this. But basically, talking to your patrons is a really useful tool that sometimes we don't always use. And I already mentioned doing reviews. And then the last thing is running a smooth event, and thank God for the tattered cover, because they taught me everything I know on running an event. But basically, you want the author to be very comfortable. And so you've saved a parking place, you've walked them in, you've asked if they need anything besides water. Sometimes I email their publicist ahead of time because I've had certain authors want certain things like, oh, sugar-free Red Bull or something. And I like to have all that on hand, and the right signing pens and Post-it notes. And then with your volunteers and staff, you can kind of man the signing line, this is after the event, and help the author get through the line of people. At the event, obviously take photos, and why I say have Post-it notes is I took a picture, is it really helps the author not to have to ask everyone in line, how do you spell your name? So if you guys have volunteers flap books and put Post-it notes very clearly written in each person's book, it goes a lot quicker. Again, remember to make sure you pass out the feedback forms or do a Zoomerang or something and get feedback from your audience, because the publisher is going to want to know what that feedback was besides numbers and photos and stories. They want to know who came. Sometimes you're able to tell them what sort of demographic came, what age group came, and that's sometimes helpful too. So after all this, hopefully you have just a great event and everyone is happy. You've sold books, the author is happy because he has a large crowd, and they sign books. And I'm happy to answer any questions. My email address was up on the first slide, and I think that's all going to be downloadable after this. But I thank you so much for including me today, and I hope some of what I said was helpful, but I just say be creative and have fun and have great events. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Boy, that's a great information for all of us to think about. So our time has come now for questions and answers. I certainly want to thank all of the authors for some great information and some pretty thought-provoking ideas for us. I'm going to give you all a few minutes to write some questions down, and we'll take as many as we can. And as you're doing that, I've got two questions that have already come through that I'm going to go ahead and ask. The first question was, what if you don't have a bookstore that's nearby? How can you handle book sales? And I want to turn that over to both Virginia to answer that first, and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, I would say that if you don't have a bookstore, that you can order the books from the publisher, and you can contact each individual publisher. The special markets department should be able to help you out. And if if somebody from the library cannot sell the books, then typically, in my experience, they have gotten somebody from the Friends group to sell the books, and that usually takes care of any sort of issues as far as employees of the library selling the books.
This is Elizabeth. I would agree with Virginia wholeheartedly. Often, if our libraries that we work with don't have a bookstore nearby, we do the same thing. We either encourage the library to order the books, or encourage them to work with their friends groups to order the books. And like Virginia said, you can call up our customer service number here at Random House. You can tell them it's for an event. You can order the books. Often the books, I think all the time, the books are purchased by you at a discount and on a returnable basis, so you don't have to keep the books that you don't sell. They can be returned. So it really makes it a very positive experience, both for us and for you, so that you can have books there and make the author happy, but that you don't have to keep them all.
Thank you. Now, Lisa, we have a question for you because you talked about evaluation. What sort of questionnaire do you have? What sort of questions do you ask? And then there was a question about using Zoomerang.
Okay, well, I'm kind of new to Zoomerang too, but you can do surveys on Zoomerang and send them to the emails if you have the emails of your patrons. And we use Events event system, which allows them to register themselves for, and this is non-paid events. This is just for a library event like Brad Thor. They're just coming, it's free, and they put a lot of them times they put their email addresses, and then you can send it out afterward to them via Zoomerang. But I do little half sheets that we have used for a while, feedback forms, and you don't ask their name, but you do ask at the bottom for additional comments, and also if they would like to opt in to get emails about your book and author events. It has where they are from in the district, like are you from whatever city or town, and it has how did you hear about this event, from the paper, from e-newsletters, from whatever, signs over the bathroom door. I mean, you can do that whatever is appropriate for your library. And then it also asks what age group they're in, and we use it for kids so as well as adults. So when I do an adult author event, I just delete the kid part and put, basically start about 18 when it's appropriate. And then it asks, it asks for how, who, basically your what, when, where, how, and who. That you want it, what things you want to know about them. Do you want to know what other authors they'd like to see? Do you want to know if it's their first time coming? Would they come again? I mean, it's really up to you. And what I do is I try and always gather up some books, and because I work at a bookstore, it's a little easier for me sometimes, sort of as a giveaway, and we maybe pull names and things at events. So that's kind of helpful to get people to write their little feedback forms at the end and then do a quick drawing, or you can do a drawing separately. But anyway, that's what I do. And Zoomerang, I've done one survey using Zoomerang, and it's working pretty well, but our community relations department is going to start doing that kind of thing more often, because we think that more people might respond even at a later time. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. One of the questions that we have asked about how you handle tickets for events and if there are fees to attend. So Lisa, I'm going to ask you to respond to that first, and then I'm going to ask Elizabeth and then Virginia to answer about ticketed events and fees, and what your thoughts are about that, or using authors for ticketed events.
Okay, for ticketed events like our Top Chef Hugh Atchison's coming up September 29th, we are doing that at an outside venue because we wanted to do a larger event. So we're doing that at the Parker Cultural and Arts Center, and they are selling the tickets. So basically it's through their box office. There's links all over our website that people go to them, and there probably is some kind of fee attached to the ticket, but it's fairly small. Last fall we did Eric Larson at the Lone Tree Arts Center, and they handled the tickets. We have done in the past us handling the tickets through PayPal, and that was sort of problematic. I think it sort of works better when it's at the box office of where you're going to have the event. For in-house events, most of ours are free, so I don't really have tickets. They register through Events, so I get a sort of an idea of how many people are coming, because our upstairs at Highlands Ranch Library, by the time we move a few things, we can seat 320 people. So it's nice to know that you're not going to have 500 and trying to cram in there. It wouldn't work. So that's what we do, is registration. Obviously that doesn't always work. People just come, but hopefully it all sort of evens out if people who've registered don't come. So that's how we work it.
This is Elizabeth. From the publisher's perspective, ticketed events can be great. We've done a lot of them, and some really, really successful ones. Our authors are definitely willing to do ticketed events if that is what you're concerned about. They would just need to know that it is going to be a ticketed event and not open to the whole public. So in your proposals for a ticketed event, just outline that very clearly so that the publicist and the author know that this is a ticketed event that is closed to the general public. And often authors don't have a problem with that at all. What's great about ticketed events, whether it's a brunch or a lunch or a dinner or some kind of fundraiser, is, and what I've seen work very successfully, is when the organization or the library bundles the ticket price for the event in with the price of a book, so that with your ticket you get a book, and the price of the ticket covers both the book and your entry, because that's basically guaranteed book sales that makes the author and us happy. And then everyone has the opportunity to get a book and get it signed at the end of the program. So they really can be extremely successful.
Hi, it's Virginia. The only thing I'll add is just sort of, well, everything that Elizabeth said about ticketed events. They're wonderful because they do ensure a turnout and a book sale when you're tied into the ticket, the price of the ticket. But the other thing that Lisa was talking about, I don't think can be stressed enough. Registration is really key if you can do it, because boy, it's scary when you're sending somebody out there, and it's scary for us, the publisher. It's scary for you, the library, because in the end you're the ones who are standing there hoping that people come, and it can be awkward if people don't come. So we have had times when a library will let us know that they have done registration, nothing, no money involved, just registration to get a sense of how many people are coming, and on more than one occasion an event has been canceled because of low turnout, or just not very large interest. And so honestly, that is so much better than standing there with 3 people, 2 of whom are the author's parents.
Thank you. I've got another good question over here, and Virginia, I'm going to let you start this one, and then Elizabeth, you can answer too. And the question is, when a library contacts you, is it better to have a set date, saying, I need an author for Tuesday, August the 15th, or would you rather it be open-ended and say, I will take this author anytime?
Okay, hi, it's Virginia. I just had this come up not that long ago with a library that was interested in Dennis Lehane, and they gave me a range of dates. And going back again to what I was saying about, plan as far in advance as you can. From the time that I received the request for Dennis to the time that I was able to get an answer back, which thankfully was yes, which is wonderful and such a great feeling to be able to call the library back and say he can do it. That was a lot of time though, and in that time, some of those dates didn't work for him, and also some dates started to not look so great for the library. They were looking at different things that were happening at the same time in the community, and they revised it and they said, you know what, would this date work better? Could he possibly do this date at this time? And so starting out with a range of dates is better, because in the end, when the library calls and they say, you know, we would like to have so and so, my first question is, how many people are you going to get? What's better, a Wednesday night, a Saturday afternoon, a 2 o'clock program, a 7 o'clock program? You need to tell me, because you know I don't. So that's the answer. Whatever is going to draw the most people, and that's really going to just depend on your experience with either programs that you've had in the past, or really if you haven't had any, you're just starting out. You know, how busy your library is at that time, and just what makes sense. So that's my answer. Give us a range, and then when we have more flexibility.
Hi everybody, it's Elizabeth again. I totally agree with Virginia, and I guess I would just add to it that it depends on what event you're hoping to plan. If you, for instance, are hoping to plan an anniversary celebration for your library, it's the 100th anniversary, and there's a specific day that you want the event to take place on, that's great. But I would say that if you have a specific date, then you need to be flexible with the author you're inviting. You can say, we want an event on October 3rd, and we're interested in nonfiction writers. Here's our wish list of the top 5. Can you get this person or someone like them? So if you have a set date, be flexible with the author. Vice versa, if you are set on a specific author, like Virginia said, be flexible with the timing. I can't stress that enough. There are a lot of our authors are often on tour, and often they are scheduled for interviews, and their schedules get really, really crammed and hectic. So being patient can really pay off. The other thing to keep in mind is that our authors are also have writing. So they have time that they need to set aside for writing. And so if you are patient and really want to get an author and you are flexible on the timing, it's much more likely to happen.
We still have a lot of questions, and I'm afraid our time is going to run out soon. So I just wanted to remind the audience again that all of our speakers are happy for you to email them directly after this webinar with any questions that you have specific to your library or your community, or a topic that hasn't been addressed that you're interested in. I'm going to throw this two-part question out to all three of the speakers, and let Elizabeth start first, and then we'll go to Virginia, and Lisa will let you wrap up. And we've talked a lot about audience size. But there are small libraries that, for that community, 50 people is a large audience. This isn't all a numbers game, is it, that you have to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there? And then to also address a little bit about funding for these authors. Can you negotiate some of their fees? And for you, Lisa, specifically, how do you pay for some of this? Is it through friends' money or grant money?
Thanks, Andrea. This is Elizabeth, and I'll start. I'll start first with the question about audience size. No, of course we don't have a set audience size that you must reach when you have an author participate. But I would just keep in mind that there, both here, our publicists and our authors, some of them do have expectations about what kind of audience size that they would like to have. Their time is valuable both with their writing and the other things that they do. So the larger the audience for some of them, the better. Some of our authors, when they go on tour, expect audiences of 100 plus. Some don't. It really depends on the author. So that's something to keep in mind when looking for your authors, that some authors will be willing to travel and willing to look at different size audiences, but some authors may have higher expectations. But of course, the audience size is not the only thing. What's great for us too is not only the moment when the author is in front of your audience, but all of the publicity you do before and after the event is also increased and added exposure for our authors, which we appreciate greatly. So everything you do to promote the book beforehand, if you get certain community organizations involved, all of that is great exposure for us. One thing I would suggest, if your library is small and you don't have the space for a larger author event, you might want to consider pairing up with a school in your region, or a university, or another organization that has a large meeting space, so that if you are planning to have an author come in and you know that your location is not going to be large enough for the audience you expect, work with another organization to see if you can find a great space for that. The second part of the question was from Andrea about negotiating fees. Yes, fees are absolutely negotiable. If you come with a fee that you can work with, we can see if that will work for us. Often it has to do a little bit with the cost of transporting the author. So that might be the only place where you'd come into a hiccup, or if it's an author in our speakers bureau, they may have set fees, but a lot of our authors do not have set fees, and so our speakers agents or our publicists are willing to negotiate with you on the price of things like that.
Hi, it's Virginia. I think Elizabeth pretty much touched on everything that I was going to say. I saw that question in the chat room, and I was hoping that we would talk about it, because I think, we're so glad that everybody, so many people have tuned into this webinar, and these questions are great. And but I'm really, really rooting for not only the libraries that have done events before. I want to do more of them and make them larger and even more successful, but I really want to encourage the smaller libraries that haven't done it before to do it. And just because I think somebody wrote in and said, well, 50 would be a big number for me. Would that be okay? Of course it would, because as Elizabeth said, there are juggernaut authors who expect, frankly, juggernaut size audiences. They expect those big turnouts, but there are lots of other authors who would be thrilled to talk to 50 people. So it's just something that I'm glad that somebody wrote that question in, and I really hope that you reach out to us so that we can work with you and hopefully get somebody to your library that will be good fit for your patrons, because it goes back to that. What are they reading? What do they like? Who can we send to you? And that's the start. That's where it starts, and then it grows from there. And I think it's very exciting. It's a great opportunity. Thanks for sending in the question.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate too that we do big events, but we also do plenty of smaller events. I do a lot of Colorado authors. There are so many amazing Colorado authors that live just down the road or up north, and you can negotiate with them or their publicist on travel payments or whatever. And they've been great events. I've had wonderful events with 20 people. I've had great events with 30 people, because the authors were really excited to talk, and the people who were there were excited to listen. There are a lot of new authors out there, so don't forget those people, and use that tool, that GeoCity tool in Above the Tree Line, and or the website. See who lives by you or in the region. If you're smaller state, it's not too big a deal if they come from Connecticut and you're in New York or whatever. The other thing is funding. Well, we're fortunate because we had a foundation, and they're kind of redoing it now, but we had funds, and we budget every year for authors. So it just depends on your library district or or the library that you're at. If you have a budget. We haven't done real grants for authors yet. It may happen sometime, but it's been really fortunate for us to have a foundation, and I know we are really fortunate. I know a lot of libraries would love to have something like that. So I would just say try and be creative, and a lot, again, newer authors that live near you that are out. who might become huge, they might be willing to just come and talk if you're selling the book or having someone come in and sell the book. So be creative, and I can't stress enough, keep the publicist in the loop. Talk to them, email them back and forth. Let them know how your crowd is when you're building. Let them know you have questions. So that's what I would say. Just keep everyone in the loop and the communication open, and it should really be helpful to you.
Well, we are out of time over here, and there's still a lot of good questions, so I hope you will email those to Elizabeth or Virginia or Lisa. And I also want to thank everybody for participating today. Obviously, this is a topic that's garnered a lot of interest. There were some questions, too, about children's authors programming and school librarians, so maybe that is a topic for a future webinar. I would suggest if anybody in the audience has ideas for future webinars that would be helpful to contact the ALA Public Programming Office so we can think about this and put this in the mix. And I just want to say before I close, thank you so much to Virginia, Elizabeth, and Lisa for sharing this time and this great information. Please, everybody, go to the website, get the handouts, their contact information, and make people like Virginia and Elizabeth and the other library marketing directors on the list your friends, because the more they know you and about your community, the more they can help you be successful. So thank you all, and I'm going to turn this back over to the ALA office.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to all of our speakers today for their fantastic information on creating author programs in the library. You will be, all of our participants today will be receiving a brief survey about this session, which you should receive by email tomorrow morning. And when you get that email, please do take a few minutes to share your feedback with us. We do like to hear what you thought of our session, and if you have ideas for future sessions, that's really important information to us. Thank you again to all of our speakers, and thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon, and we're going to close the room briefly, so everybody have a nice afternoon.